Special Envoy for Freedom of Religion or Belief Bill as amended in committee to be considered.
No amendments on consideration. Third reading, what day?
Now.
Fiona Bruce.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I beg to move that this bill be read a third time. It's been a long journey to get this bill, the Special Envoy Bill for Freedom of Religion or Belief, to this point, and I want to thank the cross-party and public efforts and acknowledge the international interest in it. And at the outset, I particularly want to express my thanks to the Foreign Secretary, Lord Cameron of Shipping Norton, for his personal and vocal support for this bill, including in the other place. It is pertinent that this bill is a private member's bill because, whilst it implements recommendation 6 of the Truro Review and is therefore a manifesto commitment implementation, its origins have come from the backbenchers of the Commons and the Lords. The inaugural report of the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Freedom of Religion or Belief in 2012 recognised the challenge for the attention and concern of the right for freedom of religion or belief when its first report described this, as in Article 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, as an orphaned right. So, Mr Deputy Speaker, this bill will ensure that the office of the Prime Minister's Special Envoy for Freedom of Religion or Belief is secured as a permanent fixture in statute, and it will embed the progress that the UK has made in promoting the fundamental and universal human right of freedom of religion or belief around the world. Since 2012, when the All-Party Parliamentary Group first produced that report, it has grown in number to over 180 parliamentarians, I believe the largest all-party group in this place. And that reflects the increase in awareness and support for the right of freedom of religion or belief here in the UK. And I'm very proud of this, having worked now internationally in this role as the Prime Minister's Special Envoy for some 3.5 years. I know that the parliamentary work on this stands out as a beacon across the world. And it was with great delight that I heard one of my parliamentary colleagues from the opposition benches say, in this work, you can't put a piece of paper between us here in this house in what we believe in. But the increase in awareness that there is here for this work sadly reflects the reality that across the world, the rights of religious minorities are today under severe attack. Freedom of religion or belief has never been more important a cause to champion, for the simple reason that there have never been more people at risk. Not just millions, but hundreds of millions discriminated against and denied life's chances simply on account of what they believe. Now, some may point out that to have a special envoy in statute is unprecedented. But if the only objection to any change was simply that it is unprecedented, we'd never make any progress. Indeed, that's why we're here in this place, to make legislative change. What is unprecedented is that people have never been more heinously and despicably denied their wish to live out their beliefs. They've never previously experienced, in the numbers they do today, more abuse, emotional or material hardship, incarceration, even death, simply on account of what they believe. And I hope to give you some examples of this a little later in my speech. In the time that I've been the UK Prime Minister's Special Envoy, as I say, from late 2020, we've seen so many instances of an increase in concerns about this issue. Not just an increase in the number of authoritarian regimes, but we've also seen new challenges to freedom of religion or belief through the ever-increasingly sophisticated technology that is being used to oppress people, and now the darkly sinister expansion of transnational repression. In countries around the world, and let me mention a few, we've seen, for example, the military coup in Myanmar exacerbating the persecution of religious minorities, not least the Rohingya Muslims. We've seen the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan, with every religious group there, other than those willing to succumb to the Taliban's ways, now oppressed and living in fear. In Russia, Jehovah's Witnesses are now being imprisoned as criminals, including the elderly, simply for being pacifists and for being unwilling to serve in the army. And Putin is weaponizing Orthodox Christianity in the war against Ukraine, with places of worship there deliberately destroyed and reports of pastors disappearing. We've seen daily disturbances in Iran, for which some have paid with their lives, and at the core of which is the cry for every Iranian to be free to live in accordance with their individual beliefs. In Nigeria, thousands of Christians and some moderate Muslims are being massacred by Islamic extremists every year. Just on Tuesday this week, we commemorated the 21st birthday of Leah Sharibu, who was abducted by Boko Haram 7 years ago and not released as were other Chibok schoolgirls because she refused to renounce her Christian faith. In Nicaragua, the Catholic Church is being particularly targeted. Many have been expelled, those, for example, running religious schools or medical centres. Even Mother Teresa's nuns, who'd been working there for over 30 years, were required to leave the country on no notice at all. And we're all aware of the situation in China, where over 1 million Uyghurs, and reportedly increasingly more, are currently egregiously incarcerated in 20th century concentration camps. Many disappeared forever, many reported having died. And the allegations of forced organ harvesting against the Falun Gong practitioners would simply defy belief had these allegations not been persistently made by so many. And in Tibet, according to recent UN reports, up to 1 million children as young as the age of 2 are being sent away from their families to boarding schools, alienated from their families, cultures and beliefs. The world should not stand silent about such things.
Will she give way? Just before she moves on, I'd like to thank my honourable friend for the specific work that she has done as Envoy. As she's just shown, she has used her voice endlessly to shine a light on some of the darkest corners of the world. And before she moves on, I know that she will want me to mention Sudan, where we've seen systemic ethnic cleansing of non-Arabs, maybe more for race than religious grounds. But I know she'll also want me to mention that religious leaders can be a force for good in trying to stop violence. And in particular, the example in South Sudan, when we saw the Pope, the Archbishop of Canterbury, and the moderator of the Church of Scotland work together to call for an end of violence. So I'd like to really say a massive thank you for her work as this envoy. It shows why the envoy is so important.
Well, I thank the honourable member for her intervention and even more so for her work as chair of the all-party parliamentary group for Sudan and South Sudan, and indeed for the acknowledgement of the importance of freedom of religion or belief that she paid as a minister in the Foreign Office. And she is absolutely right. The influence that religious leaders can have in bringing communities together and in preventing the kind of atrocities that I've referred to cannot be understated, and it's been my privilege this year to have collaborated together with the Archbishop of Canterbury to focus and highlight this, including in an event in the Foreign Office at which over 100 of those engaged on this issue here in the UK and internationally, including several parliamentarians. I remember the Honourable Member for Suffolk Coastal came, attended. The role I have gives the UK an additional privilege in holding out the importance of this issue, freedom of religion or belief, across the world. But actually, the men, women and children around the world who suffer, whether under the hard arm of authoritarian regimes or at the ruthless whim of militant mobs, they need not just our voices. They need our partnership, not just our words. They need our actions, not just our intentions, but our effective help. And that's why this role and the office that I have the privilege of holding at present needs securing and resourcing long-term, beyond the term of any particular government or party in power. And of course, it is the intent of this bill to do just that. As I say, this bill fulfills the Government Manifesto commitment to act on its words to implement fully the Truro Review, which included a recommendation to make the Special Envoy role permanent with the requisite authority and resources. And in fact, there's only one other country in the world which has a similar office. That's the US. It's had a permanent office promoting and protecting freedom of religion or belief over now 25 years, and the stability of that office over time has ensured a build-up of resources, of expertise, of research capabilities that enable it to make a significant contribution towards combating phobe abuses across the world. But the UK, whilst we may be smaller, I believe, given such an office, secured and resourced, very much as a continuation of the office I've got the privilege of holding at the present time, I believe will enable us to still speak across the world with a powerful voice for good. We've seen this. We've seen the influence, for example, that the current Foreign Secretary is having for good as he speaks out across the world. And I've been so encouraged as I've represented now 3 Prime Ministers to see the respect within which the UK is held as we speak out internationally. And we sometimes underplay this here to our detriment. In the Bill Committee, it was recognised that whilst it will be the Prime Minister who will, of course, personally appoint their Special Envoy, the legislative description in the bill is a Minister of the Crown. The title, the Prime Minister's Special Envoy, provides the vital authority internationally to advocate on behalf of the UK, which I've just touched on. The clause in the bill also reflects the current purposes of the envoy and the reporting requirement directly to the Prime Minister. And it's that direct accountability which is so important and something which I've found so helpful under each of the Prime Ministers that I've served. And I want to thank all of them for their support for my role, which has been active. Provision is made in subsection 6 for the continued office of the Special Envoy and resources to fulfil the role. Now, honourable friends, and if I can refer to us as friends across the House, we're all on the same side when it comes to advocating for freedom of religion or belief. In fact, I don't know of a single member in this House who opposes this bill. Why? Because we recognise that this will provide an opportunity to do good, real good, to change lives, recognising that anyone who would oppose this bill or seek to prevent its passage in any way is in effect opposing that opportunity to do good. Yes.
I thank my friend for giving way. I absolutely support this bill, Mr Deputy Speaker. I am not a religious person. I do not follow any religion. But I am supporting this bill because I believe in freedom. And I think it's so important. And does the Honourable Member for Congleton agree with me that actually this bill is obviously about the freedom of religion, but it's also the freedom of belief. And that is what is at the very heart of this bill. It's about the freedom, whatever your religion, whatever your belief, that you have that freedom to feel what you feel.
Yes. Thank the Honourable Member, and she's absolutely right. And if you like, the clue is in the title. The Prime Minister's Special Envoy for Freedom of Religion or Belief. And that's the title of this bill, because the belief indicates that there are some who don't hold a religious belief, but they are equally entitled to our support and our advocacy and protection on account of their beliefs, whatever they are. And I want to just give the House, if I may, some examples of the good that securing this office permanently could ensure continues. My office, the Office of the Prime Minister's Special Envoy for Freedom of Religion or Belief, initiated about 18 months ago a monthly programme called our Religious Prisoners of Conscience Scheme. Every month we champion and call for the release of a prisoner across the world incarcerated, some in inhumane conditions, simply on account of their beliefs. We've championed a Jehovah's Witness in Tajikistan, Buddhist in Tibet, Montagnards in Vietnam, a Sufi Muslim in Nigeria, Christians and human rights leaders in Myanmar, Nicaragua, a pastor in Cuba, Baha'is in Iran, and others. This monthly programme was quickly taken up by the International Religious Freedom or Belief Alliance, now of 43 countries, which the UK chaired for 2 years, 2022-3. That meant that it's not just the UK calling for the release of these prisoners, but the collective voice of countries from around the world. And so, this advocacy, along with the advocacy of others internationally, has resulted now in 4 of those prisoners being released, all of whom were facing several years. They included an elderly prisoner who was extremely ill, needed medical attention, and would, I believe, have died had he not been released. He's now had that treatment and is getting better. And 2 others were young girls in their 20s, facing several years in prison simply for having changed their faith. They are now free and starting new lives safe in another country. And just this week we've heard good news that another of our prisoners of conscience who we've championed, and this will interest the Honourable Member for the cities of London and Westminster, he's Mubarak Bala in Nigeria, and he's a humanist, and he was sentenced to some 25 years in prison simply for his belief. We championed his case. In fact, the Deputy Special Envoy, David Burrows, he went to Nigeria and he met with Mubarak's wife last year. And I'm pleased to say just this week we've heard that his sentence has been reduced. It's been reduced to 5 years. That's good news. We're not giving up, though. We're going to carry on campaigning for his full release. But that is the good this role can do and does. Apart from challenging autocratic regimes, therefore, as we do, working in this sphere, standing up for people whose basic human rights are being trampled on simply because of what they believe, can make all the difference in the world for people such as those I've just mentioned. And this has enabled the UK to show global leadership. I'm proud to say that the Special Envoy team for Freedom of Religion or Belief recently won an international award for government leadership on Forum. So as this bill, as I hope, passes its final stage here in the Commons today, I look forward to it going forward to the Lords, and I want again to thank everyone who's been involved in its passage to date.
Question is that the bill be now read the 3rd time. Karen Bradley.
Very much, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I rise to speak for a very short amount of time in support of my honourable friend's bill, putting the Special Envoy for Freedom of Religion or Belief on a statutory footing is an extremely good measure and one that we should all support. I just wanted to very briefly talk about the way I have seen my honourable friend carry out her role in my capacity as chair of the British group of the Interparliamentary Union. My honourable friend regularly attends events that we hold here where we host parliamentarians from around the world, and her presence and her ability to connect with those parliamentarians, to offer them the support they need. Very often they are politicians that are, because of their own religion, subject to potential persecution in their own country, despite being elected politicians, and my honourable friend really does provide great support and really does offer them hope for their work they are doing, that they can have a positive outcome. She was also able to demonstrate the UK's lead in this area at the first, and only so far, but I hope there'll be more, IPU Interfaith Dialogue, which was held last year. And my honourable friend was one of the star speakers at that event, able to come in and talk about the work we do here in the UK. This was an event that brought together faith leaders and politicians from around the world, trying to open up that dialogue, trying to show, and there were some authoritarian regimes that were present, but trying to show that freedom of religion and belief is a very, very valuable matter, and that we as politicians need to communicate more with faith leaders than we probably do. In my own experience as a minister, it is faith leaders that actually, when I was the Minister for Modern Slavery, it was the faith groups that were actually able to offer the most support to victims of modern slavery. And let's face it, Mr Deputy Speaker, you are one of the most amiable and approachable chaps I know. But I suspect that many of your constituents find it easier to speak to their local priest, rabbi, religious leader than they do to you, because of the trust that people have in the religious and faith leaders that they interact with. And therefore, having a dialogue between you and your faith leaders, I know, is incredibly important, as it is for all of us here, because it's how we find out about what is going on for our constituents on the ground and how we can get support to our constituents. So it cannot overstate the importance of faith and its interaction with politics, and how we must all be part of it. I see my honourable friend wishes to intervene.
Thank the honourable lady for highlighting the importance of interfaith dialogue, and I can't miss the opportunity to promote one of the projects which is being undertaken at present by the International Alliance of 43 countries. We have a working group on interfaith dialogue which has been launched this year, and we are calling for contributions towards that of good examples from around the world of interfaith dialogue. And I encourage anyone in this place or listening to this debate or reading about it afterwards to contact our alliance. You can do so through myself in order to contribute. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so grateful to my honourable friend for raising that issue, and I know that that will be something that around this House we will all take note of and look to promote to our constituents. So I will conclude there by just saying that putting this on a statutory footing does give the UK a leading role. We already have that leading role in this area, but I think putting it on a statutory footing gives it even more and ensures that continuity and the intent of this Parliament to ensure that freedom of religion and belief is always observed.
Dr. Thérèse Coffey.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I rise to support this important piece of legislation. And I will be the first to say that quite often I think Parliament rushes too quickly to create officers and commissioners for this, that and the other, when actually a lot of this work should be done by Parliament and be held to account. Done by ministers and be held to account by Parliament and the activities they undertake. But I'm also very conscious of something that may seem quite narrow in its scope, can often be lower down in the day-to-day life of a minister. And actually, the challenge that people of faith face around the world is so acute that creating this special role permanently, as Parliament wishes, is a really important step in making sure that one of the most fundamental freedoms that people have, freedom of religion or belief, is something that the United Kingdom cherishes so much that the Prime Minister himself or herself will have somebody doing that role in their name, working with the Prime Minister and the Foreign Office in order to make sure that interventions, that convening through things like the International Alliance and similar, isn't necessarily just an afterthought, but is something that this Parliament has decided it really matters to the outcomes that this post seeks to achieve. I've had the good fortune this week, Mr Deputy Speaker, to be part of the all-party parliamentary group on the Holy See and was in the Vatican this week with 3 other members of Parliament. And we met a variety of groups, as well as being part of the general audience and meeting His Holiness Pope Francis this week. I was struck by the conversations that we had with sisters, the Superior General's institution. And these nuns take really valuable work, undertake valuable work, often dangerous work, right around the country, right around the world. Not only in their traditional forms of things like education or helping with care, hospitals or palliative care, but also increasingly about trying to tackle things like modern slavery. I give way to my honourable friend.
I'm so grateful to my honourable friend, right honourable friend, for giving way. And I declare an interest, as I am a trustee of an organisation called Arise, which does exactly that. We work with the sisters around the world. We train the sisters to be able to identify potential victims of forced labour and exploitation, and to give them training on how they can make sure that workers, for example, on tea plantations in India, are properly regularised, know what their rights are, have the right documentation. And it's the sisters that do that work, and they are utterly wonderful, and it gives me a great opportunity to pay tribute to them. I thank her for that.
Well, I thank my right honourable friend, and I know when she was in the Home Office how much this mattered to her. And one of the things in particular is that traditionally the sisters, the nuns, will stay in places of conflict, in places of real difficulty, despite the threats that they receive. And in the past, often being a nun or a priest or a religious would have actually got some kind of protection for people. But unfortunately, that's no longer the case. No. And in fact, starting to become a target because of that very reason. Now, 12% of the world's nuns, I am led to believe, are in India. And India is an amazing country, but many of us will have been horrified by the regular persecution that is happening actively against Christians in parts of that country.
Yes.
And it's important, well, of course the UK government needs to have those important relationships with our Commonwealth friend, with having just held a very successful G20, and a very important part of the global economy, but also to challenge aspects of, in terms of religious freedom and belief. And while I do believe our ministers do that successfully, I think it's also an additional benefit for having a special envoy who is there on behalf of the Prime Minister, but is also working through the International Alliance with many other countries in order to continue to raise these particular issues. And the Honourable Lady had already mentioned the case that she had tackled in Nigeria. I give way to my honourable friend.
Thank you. The Right Honourable Member's making an excellent speech, and if I may just augment what she's spoken of regarding the Alliance. Just this week, the 3 members of the Council of Experts of the International Alliance have produced a report on the continuing atrocities in Manipur. Now, this has now been going on for a year. I'm very pleased that the Foreign Secretary actually has referred to, in very positive terms, the first report that our experts did a year ago. And I hope now that colleagues and those listening to this debate will look at that further report, which has been led by the very well-known, prestigious former BBC reporter, one of our experts, David Campanale. But those atrocities in Manipur need a lot more attention.
Well, my honourable friend is right to point that out, and I give this as an example of why a permanent role will continue to bring that focus and that support as the legislation sets out about having staff accommodation as necessary in order to undertake that. Now, in terms of people who've occupied this role, I think we've had the Noble Lord Archimed of Wimbledon, we have the Honourable Member for Medway, and we have the Honourable Member for Congleton, who I think has been exemplary in her approach. And I know that when I was speaking to the Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs in the Vatican the other day, he was also commending the Honourable Member for Medway too in regard to the interactions. The report that was commissioned by the Right Honourable Member for South West Surrey when he was Foreign Secretary, leading to the Truro review that my honourable friend has talked about considerably. I think what's important is this role has also evolved, that it's simply not about Christianity.
No.
And that was the initial trigger for what was happening and how the Foreign Office was working in that regard. But I think it's important, as my honourable friend has said eloquently and undertaken, that it expands that bit further. Now, in terms of other aspects, she's already mentioned the United States as the other country. I believe this will start to trigger potential for posts elsewhere in the world. And that has to be a force for good. To have people solely focused, and of course the legislation does not require it to be a politician. For what it's worth, I think there's a sensible balance that can be had. But again, that will be the decision of the Prime Minister in the future in order to undertake that. And nor is it necessarily trying to create some other platform for somebody disgruntled. But it would require the sort of person which I believe that a Prime Minister of whatever political party runs this country will have the wisdom to somebody who is not there to seek the headlines, but is there to seek the headlines for the people who have been deprived of the freedom to practice their religion or hold a belief. So to that end, while I'm conscious the front benchers are yet to speak, and I'm conscious of the progress that needs to be made on a variety of pieces of legislation today, and I know that my honourable friend also wishes to speak, I'll abbreviate my comments, but I do want to say that this really matters to me personally. I believe it matters to my constituents, but I believe it matters for us to have a world where these sorts of freedoms are treasured, are protected, and to have a special envoy in the name of the UK Prime Minister will be a strength to make sure that happens.
Lisa Cameron.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I want to personally congratulate the Right Honourable Lady for all of her work in this bill in this area. I was very privileged to be involved at the committee stage, and I fully support the work that she's been undertaking and the work that she wishes to see taken forward through the bill. I think the Prime Minister's Special Envoy for Freedom of Religion and Belief is such a very important role for many, many people. Internationally, as we have heard, and it places the UK in a firm leadership role with regards to this particular area. But also, I was so privileged to see what happened in my own constituency of East Kilbride, Strathaven and Lesmahagow when the Right Honourable Lady came to visit as part of her United Kingdom tour. And we were the Scotland leg of that tour in East Kilbride at St Bride's Parish Church. And so many members of my local community from all different faiths came to hear her speak about the importance of this role, about how she was reaching out internationally and making a difference for the most vulnerable people in the world. And all of them were united from many different faiths in seeing the value of this role, the work that she was doing, and how vital it is that it continues for the future. And I think it's testament to Right Honourable Lady, once again, that she's such a selfless individual that not is she wishing at all to champion the work that she is doing herself, but she wants to champion the plight of those most vulnerable, and she wishes from the bottom of her heart to make sure that that work continues for decades and parliaments to come under the auspices of this very, very important role. So I've seen it firsthand. I know that my constituency is very reflective of that across the UK, and that my constituents who saw the value of this role and came, you know, so many came to that meeting. It was packed in the local church. They're no different to those constituents across the rest of the UK who also very much value this role, value the UK's leadership, see the good work that is being done, the actual tangible outcomes in helping the most persecuted across the world. And I want to thank her once again for that work and for her selflessness in making sure that it continues for posterity. Thank you.
Catherine West.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I'd like to congratulate the member for Congleton for bringing forward the remaining bits of her bill today. And I've been in many debates with her over the years, and her commitment to the cause of freedom of religion or belief is second to none. As some of the speakers outlined this morning, it was initially a Christians persecuted abroad concept, but as the post has developed, I've been so impressed by the way that the role has developed into something much broader with so much international resonance. And freedom of religion or belief is a core tenet of fundamental human rights, and human rights will always be at the heart of Labour's outlook on the world and the centre of the shaping of our foreign policy. And my right honourable friend, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, has previously made clear and met with many of the suggestions which the member for Congleton has made to him, and I would like to put on record her commitment to cross-party working and her commitment to the policies at hand and the concerns internationally, and the way that she has been party blind in the way that she's worked in both Houses of Parliament. And the Right Honourable, in his role, my Right Honourable friend, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, has made it clear that Labour will ensure that the UK stands against persecution and oppression in any form, and will promote freedom of religion or belief as a key component of our foreign policy if we are perchance entrusted with the responsibility of government by the British people at the next election. In her assiduous campaigning on the topic, the Honourable Member and indeed members across the House have raised the mistreatment of religious minorities across the globe. And as I look around and I don't see the member for Strangford, I'm rather surprised. But I know if he were here, he would now be intervening, the member for Strangford, to say how much he supports the bill. While undeniable that in many countries, including the UK, religious freedom is something we take for granted, and where people can worship or indeed choose not to worship whatever their belief, that is sadly not the case in vast swathes of the world. There's a growing trend in recent years for religious minorities increasingly persecuted simply for the beliefs which they hold and cherish so dearly, and we do see an increase, sadly, in all sorts of persecution, for example, those in the LGBTQ community as well. I know members have often pointed out specific examples of religious persecution during debates in the Chamber, and the Chinese treatment of the Uyghur Muslim minority was in my Right Honourable friend's speech, and indeed another speech today has talked about the treatment of the Rohingya minority in Myanmar, and I know those two causes mean so much to the member for Congleton. But it's clear to all of us that the persecution of religious minorities happens in many parts of the world. It's in that spirit that I fully understand that the Honourable Member has brought the remaining parts of this bill today. We in opposition will not stand in the way of this bill moving forward, and the only thing I would like to repeat, which I did last time, is that we will be bearing in mind that there's also been backsliding on the situation for women and girls in many parts of the world, which is often tied into religious expression, with particular reference to their reproductive rights. And that's something which I'm keen to put on record as one of the concerns which does need to be borne in mind when the post is established. Well, freedom of religion or belief does not conflict necessarily with either, let's say, LGBTQ+ issues or with the rights of women and girls to reproductive health. It would be wrong to give the impression of putting rights in a hierarchy. And I'm very pleased that at Bill Committee, the technical issues around how the statutory basis would work, how the flexibility and responsiveness of the government to appoint the Special Envoy has been addressed. And I'm very pleased that at Bill Committee all of that was ironed out to cross-party conclusion. So in conclusion, Mr Deputy Speaker, it's been demonstrated in recent weeks with the new appointment of a representative for humanitarian affairs in the occupied Palestinian territories, for example, how important these roles are. But I am sure that the House will continue debating and scrutinising the situation facing freedom of religion or belief on many occasions going forward, and I would welcome both the ministers and honourable members' comments on any of the issues as we come to the conclusion of the debate, and we look forward not to dividing the House on it.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I'm really grateful to my honourable friend, the member for Congleton, for presenting this bill, which the Government is pleased to support. It's a pleasure to speak today and set out why this bill is so important in cementing and supporting our long-standing commitment to freedom of religion or belief, FORB, as it's known for short. I'd also like to thank members who have contributed both in today's debate and indeed so many before, and as the Shadow Minister says herself, other colleagues, including the Honourable Member for Strangford, who found me yesterday to give me his apologies that he wasn't going to be here today, but I think she is right. We will miss his voice in this important debate. As my honourable friend set out, the bill will make the role of the Special Envoy for freedom of religion or belief statutory. Establishing this role permanently and in perpetuity was a recommendation in the Bishop of Trudeau's 2019 independent review into the work of the then Foreign Commonwealth Office on freedom of religion or belief, the implementation of which was a manifesto commitment for the Conservatives in 2019. This bill will ensure that the Special Envoy has clearly defined duties and will report to the Prime Minister on their work, and that a Minister of the Crown must provide resources for the Special Envoy to carry out their functions. It reinforces the Government's long-standing commitment to FORB for all. This will support us in continuing to embed freedom of religion or belief within the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. But perhaps most significantly, it will ensure that the positive work being undertaken by today's Special Envoy on this human rights priority area will be continued by future role holders. I'd like to pay tribute, Mr Deputy Speaker, to my honourable friend and the current Special Envoy, the member for Congleton, for all the work that she does to promote and protect FORB globally. My honourable friend recently concluded her second term as chair of the International Religious Freedom or Belief Alliance, and this was the first time in the organisation's history that a chair was requested to serve a second term, and it is a testament to her dedication to the role. As the chair of the International Religious Freedom or Belief Alliance, our Special Envoy established a scheme to raise awareness of a different prisoner of conscience every month. This scheme has championed the cases of individuals belonging to a range of religious and belief communities, and in 3 cases individuals were subsequently relieved. Yes, of course.
I hesitate to correct the Minister, but just for the record, very recently an additional prisoner of conscience was released, which is why I referred to 4, not 3.
My old friend continues to demonstrate exactly why her role is both important and indeed her own absolute indomitable presence in this role is such value to all those who need championing. Yes, of course.
I thank the Minister for giving way. And could I just put on the record my thanks to the honourable member for Congleton. I am chairman of, co-chairman of the all-party parliamentary group on Egypt, and my honourable friend has been such a help in terms of those issues of freedom of religion and belief.
Thank you. Mr Deputy Speaker, another of my honourable friend's achievements as Special Envoy was hosting with my noble friend and Minister for Human Rights, Lord Ahmed, in the other place, the 4th International Ministerial Conference in 2022. This event brought together government delegations, faith and belief group leaders, human rights actors and civil society from over 100 countries to address the challenges to the right of freedom of religion or belief. This is just a small example of the work so diligently undertaken by our Special Envoy. I was pleased to hear the Foreign Secretary restate his support for this bill and acknowledge the excellent work being done on freedom of religion or belief last month in the other place. But on a more sobering note, the scale of abuses and violations of the rights to FORB across the world remain deeply concerning. Data from organisations like Pew Forum and Open Doors World Watch List continue to reinforce that. And history has shown us that too often, where freedom of religion or belief is under threat, other human rights are often at risk too. We are firm in our position that no one should be persecuted, abused or intimidated because of their religion or belief, or none. Protecting and promoting the right to FORB has been a long-standing commitment of this government. At the FCDO, we are working on this in a number of ways, including through our multilateral and bilateral work, and embedding FORB across our programmes. Moving to amendments tabled by my honourable friend for Congleton and agreed at the Bills Committee stage on the 24th of April. Legislation imposing duties on the Prime Minister is very rare and limited, and the amendments thus remove the statutory duties placed on the Prime Minister, instead placing these on a Minister of the Crown, which is more appropriate in this instance. However, the Special Envoy will continue to be known as the Prime Minister's Special Envoy for FORB. Retaining this title will ensure that the role continues to have the appropriate authority and recognition internationally, enabling future role holders to continue to advocate for FORB globally, as my honourable friend for Congleton does with such dedication. Clarifications on the duties of the Special Envoy were made, setting the same high expectations of delivery for future incumbents as have been achieved by my honourable friend. The title was also amended to Special Envoy for Freedom of Religion or Belief Bill, so that it refers specifically to the Special Envoy. This adjustment to the title more accurately reflects the scope and contents of this bill. And the amended bill furthermore removes the requirement to establish a separate office of the Special Envoy, ensuring that existing arrangements around resourcing are maintained. So to conclude, Mr Deputy Speaker, His Majesty's Government is committed to protecting and promoting freedom of religion or belief for all. This bill cements our commitment to the role of Special Envoy for freedom of religion or belief and delivers on our manifesto commitment to implement the recommendations of the Bishop of Truro's review. I therefore commend the bill to the House.
Fiona Bruce.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. May I thank the Right Honourable Members for Suffolk Coastal, Staffordshire Moorlands, the Honourable Member for East Kilbride, Strathaven and Lesmahagow for their speeches today, and in particular the support from the Shadow Minister, the Member for Hornsey and Wood Green, whose personal commitment to this issue I know from the very many debates that we've shared and all party groups that we've worked on together is genuine and profound. Can I thank to my right honourable friend, the Minister, the Member for Berwick-upon-Tweed, but can I also ask her to convey my thanks to all the Ministers in the Foreign Office, Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, who I know have strongly supported this bill to ensure its passage through this place. Finally, I'd like to thank all the members of the Bill Committee for their wonderful support, and the Clerk, Anne-Marie Griffiths, for her unflappable counsel and patience. Thanks too to the Honourable Member for Castle Point for her terrific and efficient support, and to my private secretary Sue Breeze in the FCDO, and finally to the Prime Minister's Deputy Special Envoy David Burrows for his unfailingly wise and calm counsel. Mr Deputy Speaker, this short bill embeds our collective commitment and solidarity with individuals across the world who courageously stand for their faith or belief and do so suffering discrimination, harassment, persecution or worse.
Yeah. And another person who I know would have been here too, and right to remember, is Sir David Amos, who is a huge supporter of the mover of this particular bill today. The question is that the bill be now read the third time. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Congratulations, Fiona Bruce.